introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the owner of Zielke Coaching Solutions. I've been in having my own coaching practice for the last, well, 5 years or so. I'm an associate certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. I also work with a group called Nehemiah Project, which is an entrepreneurial social community, international, and then also working with Kingdom business coaches. So that is where I've been. I've worked primarily with individuals and who are involved in starting up businesses, entrepreneurs, helping them discover what it is that they should do, and identifying their passions so that they can move ahead with their goals and their aspirations. During this time, I have been working with some stronger companies, not only here in Oregon, but internationally as well, in helping them make sure that their strategic plans are reset coming out of this pandemic. As we all know, there isn't a business out there today who's working off the same strategic plan they had originally established for 2020. It is now time to reassess our business assumptions and make sure our new strategic plan is set up for the reopening of our economy. And as Deanna was mentioning, that looks to be, we have the possibility here in Oregon of seeing at least phase 1 happen coming up on the 1st of June. So hopefully that will be the case. So what I want to do today is take you through a little bit of what you need to do in the way of reassessment, provide you with a couple of tools, and then just kind of wrap up and give you a few steps on how to move forward. So let's take a look first of all at what it is that you need to reassess. Well, first of all, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to come back and reassess your mission and your vision. And so in considering what it is that you as an organization or as a business have been doing, it may be time to readjust that. Maybe your mission and your vision are the, continuing on, but how you implement those is what is going to be your reassessment. Secondly, I would encourage you to develop your one-liner. If you're not familiar with Story Brand by Donald Miller, I would encourage you to pick up that book or visit his website. He has some wonderful things there on just marketing aspects and how do we get our mission or vision out there to folks. So my one-liner, and a one-liner is different than what somebody's got to mute on there. So we get the echo out of there. There we go. Thank you. So a one-liner is a little bit different than your elevator pitch. Your elevator pitch typically has been designed to inform people what you do, how you go about doing it, and just get the facts stated out there quickly. Well, a one-liner is one which you're really gearing towards engaging that individual so that they begin asking questions. The one-liner that I'm currently operating under is that I help businesses get back on the road so they can enjoy the next leg of their journey. And my question that I'm hoping that whomever I'm talking to will ask is, oh, so how do you do that? And then that provides me to enter into a conversation with them. So begin looking at developing a one-liner to see you through this next leg of your journey. Well, part of that, whoops, we've got one out of order here, so I'll go ahead and fill them all in. Part of that reassessment in the mission and the vision comes with the assumptions that we all make when we started our business, as well as those assumptions that we continue to make as we keep our business going. The first is our instincts. And I heard an interesting definition of instincts last night as I was talking with some other coaches, and the idea is that it is the internal collection of our own experiences and thought processes which gives us that internal prompting that something is the right way to do something. So it's that sense of what is internal. It's a gut level knowledge that this is what you need to be doing. So that is the first assumption that we've probably all brought with us as we developed our business. The second is our own business model. And here again, is the model that you have been operating from pre-COVID the same model that is going to be effective for you as a business moving forward. And only you can determine that through the reassessment of your that assumption. Then we come to historical data and experience. Now, the historical data, obviously, is you're looking at what has transpired in your business or organization up to the point of the pandemic. You're looking at, do you have experience to carry you through looking at your past when other crises has happened? And you may or may not have an experience where you've had to gone through a crisis that has reshaped your business before. This may be a first-time experience that you're bringing to this. So, and that leads us to the fourth assumption there is the research aspect. Is if you don't have that experience of coming through something, then you need to get out and tap into what others have done and how to move forward through situations like this. I was on a phone call with a business owner in Kenya this past week, and his story is unique. Frank Katanga. He was in a corporate position, actually had a succession of corporate positions, and he made the move into a nonprofit. And as he made that move, his assumption was that everything that he's done in corporate positions prepared him for opening this nonprofit business. He said he couldn't be more uncertain of what the future holds coming through his corporate experience than what he has the ability to plan moving forward. And so he is in the midst of part of our conversation and process was that he's in the midst of researching how to go about moving forward and such. So make sure you take time to reassess your basic business assumptions. Up until this point, feel free to, if you've got a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask as we go along. So any questions up to this point? All right, not hearing any, so I'm going to move right on ahead. So part of understanding where you're at as a business to be able to come out of the pandemic and the closures that we've experienced is understanding where you are in the business life cycle. The first stage of the business is in the discovery stage, and that is where you're identifying your calling, your idea, clarifications. What is you're passionate about, and what do you want to monetize to be able to open a business. The second stage is a startup where you're looking at the birth of the business. You've gotten your Oregon business license, opened a bank account, and that sort of stuff. But you really aren't making any money yet. This is just still the getting your foot forward in the process. Then you reach a point of break even, where your revenue equals your expenses. And as I work with people, the one piece that I work with entrepreneurs in this break-even stage is to remind them that they have to have in their budget their own salary. And until you are paying for your own salary and seeing that your revenue equals expenses, you aren't at a break-even point. And then, of course, you have profitability, where you begin to create margins in your business. And then sustainability. You move beyond the profitability by establishing systems and having people in position to make sure that those systems are working and moving you forward. Then there comes scalability. You enlarge, is that a goal, or how are you going to move forward? Maybe it's just simply offering more products or services. And how is it that you're going to expand? And then lastly is a succession. Do you have a plan for stepping out of your business to pass it off to the next generation, whether that's selling your business to someone else, maybe even utilizing selling it to employees that you have trained up, or of course the old-fashioned way of passing it off to your family. Well, the key is that each transitional stage requires you to think and act a little bit differently. And so if you're in the break-even or profit, just getting into the profitability stage when the pandemic hit, you're going to be thinking differently about the process of what it's going to take to move you out of the closure than somebody who's dealing with the sustainability or the scalability side of things. Or the succession side. In fact, I had one company that I was working with just prior to, in February, we had our last meeting, the 1st of February. He is in the process of putting his business up for sale. We were pulling together financials, and then boom, everything hit. And so he is reassessing his involvement. What does he need to do himself now in the business to see it through to get it ready for selling once we get out of the closure system? So that's much different than on the other end of the cycle, where I'm working with entrepreneurs who are now thinking of through this whole process of being involved in the closures and having their corporate positions cut and such, that they're now thinking of, there's got to be something different that I can do. Any questions on the life cycle? All right then. So, as you've been, many of you, I am sure, through this time, have realized that there's a lot of things that are not working in our culture and society today. That's not really what I'm talking about here. So we're thinking about what's going on in your organization, in your business, giving up what's not working. Have you been chasing the shiny objects as a CEO or business owner? Are there things that you have been about in the past that you've just kind of gone after because it seemed like a great idea at the time, but when you really take time to reassess, it doesn't fit with what your mission or your vision is or your strategic plan is. It just happens that was something that popped up and you started to chase after it. So you have to be careful during this time of reassessment. Obviously, if you've readjusted your strategic plan and your mission or vision, then you have to look down through all the other pieces to see if there are things that you need to let go of that you don't really need to be about to see success in moving forward. Part of that reassessment is always looking at your cost and expense evaluation. Are there costs that you can cut, expenses that you need to let go of? As I deal with entrepreneurs coming into the COVID situation, there were many who were just simply had allowed costs, certain marketing costs that overlapped one another, that they just allowed into their budget because things were going so well that they never really did a cost and expense evaluation. And so in the process, we've gone through and identified what are those strategic costs and expenses that they need to continue to be ready for when they come out of closure, as well as cutting and letting go of some of those costs and contracts that they no longer needed. Of course, there is a couple of tools that I want to share with you. The SWOT analysis is familiar probably to all of you. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the CCCSS analysis or not, but that is a newer tool that I've begun using. So, of course, the SWOT analysis, you're looking at your strengths and your weaknesses, identifying what it is that your business is strong in and is already prepared to move forward with. What areas do you need to beef up that are not strengths at this point but can be moved into the strength areas? What opportunities do you see moving forward? What are the things that you can begin doing and moving into? Services perhaps that you haven't offered before that you can offer at this point in time, or products that you have. Craig, I saw you here on the call. It's good to see you. We haven't chatted in a while. I'm glad to hear that your photography business is back up. You know, what are the opportunities you as a photographer have to create a new product rather than you know, some of the work that you have been doing in the past, and how do you go about doing that? I have another friend who's a local photographer, and she has done some of her family photography in very unique ways through Windows, and so is offering her services, just having the family pose at various windows throughout their house in different things. So that's something that she has done.
Interesting concept.
Linda is another great example of looking at opportunities, as she has done a wonderful job of pivoting her music business and getting up there, and instead of just you know, collapsing and saying, okay, I'll just wait until this is all over, she's taken some great ideas and opportunities and is moving forward to them. Everything from just putting her videos up on Facebook to now working on an idea of having small intimate dinners where she has an opportunity of coming and playing for a small gathering and working alongside an individual who will provide the catering for that and such. So Linda, I commend you for looking at those opportunities as well. And then, of course, lastly are the threats. What are the external threats that are are there that you need to take a look at? And obviously, as we look forward, how the whole pandemic issue, I mean, that is the huge threat that's with us all. We were just in a discussion about PPEs before we began today. How are that PPE looking for you as a business? Um, so I hope that you will take the time to look at that. So let's look at the CCCS analysis. There we go. So this comes from Thomas Leonard in Coachville. His first question in the analysis is continue. The first C. What is it that you are doing as a business to definitely want to continue? Most of us probably think, well, duh, that's obvious. You know, the things that we have been doing that are bread and butter, that are things. But it, you know, unless we take the time to put down the obvious, we can wind up hitting those or chasing those shiny objects. So make sure that you take time to look at you know, what it is to continue. The second C is change. What simply have you been doing, or products that you have been selling that you can change? And we have, you know, I think of an individual who has a silk screening business, and she has begun to develop a line of products that are incorporating this whole pandemic situation. We just celebrated my stepdaughter's 30th birthday, and the T-shirt says something to the effect that, you know, happy 30th birthday, this was the birthday that I was in quarantine. Something like that. Unique, humorous thing. But she is, you know, something along the line of you know, those T-shirt producers and stuff. Very easy to change. Some of us find those things to change a little bit more difficult, but we need to take the time to consider what those are or may be. The third C is complete. Is there anything, any projects, any movement forward that you had begun before the pandemic, or maybe now you are looking at having the time that you can complete a project or an idea about a service? I know that a lot of folks that I come in contact with, and some of my clients have been contemplating writing books and journals, doing podcasts, those sorts of things. This is a time to really look at how they can complete those ideas, and they have the time to do that. So, and that brings us to the first S, start. Are there things that you want to start that you haven't had a chance to? Well, we've all got some time at this point in our lives to really consider what to start and move forward. Let's get back to that. And the last S is, are there things that we need to stop doing? And that goes back to that cost and expense evaluation. What is it that we can stop doing? What do we need to do to tighten our belts? Unfortunately, we have a number of businesses that have realized that their stop is that they needed to close the business simply because they aren't able to move forward. So those are the CCCSS analysis: continue, change, complete, start, and stop. So it's going back to our time to reassess. I think we all realize that we're in an age where we are have been forced to move to technology. There's no doubt that all of us are spending more time on Zoom calls or any of the other platforms or virtual meetings than we have in the past. That is going to become the standard. I have recently heard of a consultant who is working with businesses on meetings and conferences as we are working towards our own international conference coming up in August for Nehemiah Project, that in light of having been forced into the situation where conferences and meetings have become virtual, the idea is that if you are going to have an in-person meeting or conference, you need to make sure that the value you are offering at that meeting or conference far exceeds the value of a virtual meeting. I think that people are no longer going to be so willing to spend the travel amounts, the food, etc., all those things that go into attending a conference, unless they realize that there's a greater value of being there than just simply getting the value out of a virtual meeting. So that is the new world that we're moving into. How does that translate into what you are doing in your own business? That is the assessment that you need to be moving forward to. And then, of course, there's the virtual business. We at Nehemiah Project are looking at opening a virtual marketplace for businesses so that they have an opportunity to buy and sell. They have no intention really probably of being a replacement for Amazon. That's a totally different niche than what we're looking at. Ours has more to do with services than actual products. But there again, there will be businesses with products who are seeking to tap into the whole virtual business side of things. So as you've moved through the process and you've gotten these things down as to what are the things that you need to reassess. One tool that we utilize with our clients on the Nehemiah Project side is a one-page strategic plan. And you probably certainly have seen various plans. And so this is the, a take on that model. I think I like this one because it really gives you a full picture of your company's strategic plan instead of having it page after page of a plan. You have the spot for your mission. Then your core values are listed. What is your competitive advantage? What is it that you do best, better than any other competitor? And then there's this organizational-wide strategies. How will we get there? Begin to develop a picture of what it's going to take for you to move into that space that is the top of the list in your own arena. And this can be looking at the strategic strategies and objectives that you're implementing. It can be just short kind of word pictures that identify how you're going to move into that top spot or within the top spot. And yet in the middle here, you have the opportunity to lay out those objectives and then develop specific goals for each objective. And we focus in on objectives and strategies for the financial area, your customers, the operational systems, etc. And then the people is a broader perspective than the customers. This involves all of your other stakeholders, such as your employees, your vendors, the other members of the community, the networking partners, those sorts of things. So to even looking at the strategic and organizational goals in those areas. And then there's a place up here on the right side where you have an opportunity to say, we're going to measure our success by these key performance indicators. And that provides the opportunity to make sure that you're moving forward with your strategic plan. Your vision, what your organization will look like in the future. How is your organization going to be viewed by other people in the community or internationally if you're an international organization? What is it that you want to see out there as part of that? And then how are you going to make a strategy you've built into a habit for your people? And so that's looking at the various ways in which you have interaction within your company and the staff. It's also looking at how you address and make a habit of meeting your, providing service to your customers, and that sort of thing. So, any questions on the strategic plan? Right, I did want to take a little bit looking forward.
Hey, Richard.
Yes.
Can we get that strategic plan? Like, can you email that to us?
I certainly can.
That way I don't have to take a picture of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I will have my contact information up on the last slide. I'll put that one up, and you can copy down that. My email address is just send me a note, and I'll be happy to send it for you. So I did want to take just a moment to talk about the difference between strategic objectives and making SMART goals. So strategic objectives are the fundamental building blocks of your strategy. They are the pieces that you build your business from. They're broadly defined, they're long-term, they aren't measurable objectives, but they all connect with your mission. And I like to see them as the guardrail of your strategy. So if you're going down a highway on a mountain road, the guardrail is there to keep you safe from falling off the side. So your strategic objectives operate in that capacity, so that you are continuing to move down the road in the way that you had initially begun to view your business. So they're different from SMART goals, but each of your strategic objectives are supported by SMART goals. And of course, when I'm speaking about SMART goals, we're talking about goals that are specific, that they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant to what you're doing, and they're time bound. So you have those SMART goals. Your strategic objectives are worked out through the SMART goals you establish, and each area of the organization must have their own strategic objective. And those 4 areas that I listed on the one-page sheet: the financial, the customer, the operational, and the people. And then again, just restating that each strategic objective must have its own set of SMART goals. Now, to clarify that a little bit more, here's an example of Nehemiah Project's strategic objectives. So in their financials, they have to see our revenue grow year after year. You notice there's no deadline other than the year after year piece. There's no measurable aspect to this. Although we have seen in some of our in some of the earlier strategic objectives that they put up that they had a 20% revenue growth in there, but that really became more of the SMART goal, so we moved that 20% into that. They want to build a profit, so we enlarge our reserve and ability to support nonprofits. For their customers, they want to be a leading brand in the entrepreneur arena. They want to encourage and support entrepreneurs through training, coaching, and access to capital. Operational, to ensure excellence in their service delivery, to integrate technology so that our service is efficient, to recruit and train the best staff, volunteers under the people, and to ensure diversity in our global staff. So you see, you have these strategic objectives that they utilize, and then with each strategic objective, they then take and develop several SMART goals to meet that objective. So if you haven't taken time to reassess what your strategic objectives are, that really is your first step that you need to take in order to be prepared to move out of the closure situation that we find ourselves in. So I've got one last thing to share, and then we will just open it up for discussions. This last piece is what steps do you need to take to prepare to come out of closure? Well, the first aspect that I want to look at is this whole idea of leadership. Now, whether you are a leader of an organization where you have a number of employees under you, or you are a solopreneur, the leadership aspect is you may be, in a sense, being a leader to yourself, and so you need to be able to process that as how it affects you as a solopreneur compared to how it affects you as a leader over employees. But you want to be effective. What is it that you are currently doing, and how are you doing it? Is it effective in moving you forward? Secondly, be decisive. Take steps that help you move in the direction that you decide to move in. If you are feeling like you're just kind of standing still, waiting for things to happen, that's not being very decisive. One thing that I really have appreciated about Nehemiah Project is that instead of sitting back and waiting to see what was going to happen, in our country as well as the other countries that we are involved in, 32 different countries across the globe, Nehemiah Project was very decisive from the get-go that they were going to move forward through this time and not sit back and wait and be reactionary. So they've depends upon the size of your company, but it is the opportunity for you to talk with others. If you're a solo entrepreneur, then meet with other entrepreneurs and talk about opportunities and maybe help them join you with doing some of your analysis on the business. And of course, you want to be responsible. And that is making sure that the choices you're making, the decisions, are moving your company forward in the direction that you wanted to go. The next area is under planning. What steps do you need to take in your planning? Well, first of all, if you're a larger organization, you want to make sure that your team is fully engaged in the process of moving forward. You want to develop your strategy, which we talked about. What are your objectives moving forward? How is your your goals going to meet those objectives. Taking a look at your budget, obviously, making sure that your budget is as trimmed as it can be, and that your margins, it provides you with the opportunity to increase your margins. Your cash flow, obviously, is probably what most of us have been concerned about. I hope that you have all had the opportunity to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are out there to help us with our cash flow during this time. And then, of course, planning for contingencies. There's going to be some new contingencies going forward. Just Betty, I think you mentioned that the start, or before we started actually, the whole idea of the PBEs is not something that companies or organizations had in their budgets. And so they are having to look at what the contingencies are to incorporate that equipment into their budgets. Those contingencies plans need to be established so that you can keep your budget under control. Let's talk a little bit about innovation, because each business, really, unless you continue to innovate, you're going to die. That's as simple as that. So in our innovations, as we look at how we are keeping our organization afloat, we need to obviously create margin for ourselves. And that goes back to your budget and your cash flow, the contingencies you make. You need to think outside the box. I mean, that is an old cliche, but it is as much true today as it was the first time that phrase was spoken. Sometimes we need to just throw away the box completely and start new. We need to be willing to take risks. And here's a little saying that I've come to love and share with my clients, and that is, fail fast, fail often. So if you take your risks, and if you find that you're willing to fail fast, you learn from that experience and you can move on. And it seems like, as you look at the history of companies that have made a tremendous impact in our economy, there often is a sense of failures that they have gone through and learned from to be able to springboard them onto their successes. So that's my advice to you. Maybe it may be your greatest takeaway from this time together. Fail fast, fail often. Now let me say a word about just simply communication. Honestly, the idea of communicating in your organization is to cultivate unity, to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that you're working together as an organization. Make sure your communication is clear and succinct, and make sure that it goes to all stakeholders. Now, that goes out to your customers, that goes out to your vendors, that goes out to your employees, Betty, in your case, to those who are contributing, in those senses. So it's a matter of making sure that all of your communication is moving you forward. Hopefully, it's a communication that is optimistic, and sharing your goals as you move outside of closure and how you can go about doing this. And one of the things that correlate in writing, but then also use multiple tools. One of the things that I have loved about the Hillsborough community is that it's about 2 or 3 weeks ago, somebody had made a comment on one of the, I think it was all about Hillsborough sites, about a restaurant that was just about ready to go under. And because of that comment, somebody willing to step up and communicate that to the rest of the community. They had a tremendous surge in takeout orders that really helped them stay afloat. So in taking time to make sure that our communication in the situation, the ability to ask for help from our friends and community is a tremendous piece that we need to make sure that we're willing to do. So that wraps up what I had for you. Like I said, my contact solution there is simply richard at rrzielke.com. Send me a note. I'll be happy to send you the one-page strategy, and certainly ask for any, you can ask any questions or insights that you have at that time. But would like to just open it up for any comments. Here's some responses from you on what you're taking away from this, and that sort of thing. So.
Well, I, for one, appreciated this. I was sitting here taking notes and making plans and thinking about what does our board need to think of as we go forward. I mean, we've always taken 3 to 4 women into most clubs. We're going to have to cut that way down.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to actually consider and pray about whether we can send one in. We've never done that before for safety, but we might have to just decide that's what we have to do. So how are we going to handle that? How are we going to handle hugs? How do we, because what we don't want to do is get a club in trouble and then get thrown out. But there's a lot to think about. You know, I was just thinking, well, we're just a nonprofit. So when we reopen, we were never really closed. But the way that we reach the ladies is something we need to look at. And how do we do that? And are there inventive ways to do that? So this has been a real eye-opener for me to look at more than, and like, who do I need to get on board? And I just told one of my board members, we need to have a board meeting. So it's been real interesting to me because I thought I kind of had this all in the bag until this meeting. Now I'm realizing there are things that we need to think about, like what is our strategy going to be and how are we going to meet with a girl? And if we need to meet with her one-on-one to the side, you know, do we need to be leaving distance? Because where we go in, there's cameras everywhere. I don't want them in trouble. So it's going to be a real interesting thing as we step into this, because I'm not seeing anything about stage 2 and how close we can be on stage 2, or how the clubs will run differently then. So it's going to be really, you know, and I was thinking, like, what does a karate studio do if you can't touch anybody? You know, at what point can we do that? So there's a lot to consider going forward. A lot of things I didn't think about. So thanks, Richard.
I had that same question because there was a post that came up with one of the karate studios that was reopening, and I was thinking, okay, how are they going to do that? That's going to be interesting to see. But I believe if I've got the timing down correctly, and somebody correct me if I'm mistaken here, but I believe that if we open on the 1st of June, then we have to fall within the guidelines for reopening for 21 days before we move to phase 2. Is that correct, Deanna?
It is correct, yes.
Okay.
And regarding the like gyms and martial arts and things like that, what I've heard folks are doing are having their students or their participants in boxes, so that and 6 feet apart in these boxes. And the other thing that I learned yesterday was that if you had someone who tested positive and you were around them, if you weren't practicing social distancing 6 feet apart for a sustained period of more than 15 minutes, then you should be tested and you could potentially be impacted. But if you're like training someone and you have gloves on and or if someone's doing dance and you reach into the box, adjust, help them, and then reach out and step back, and you're 6 feet, and always maintain that 6 feet of social distancing and sanitization and those kinds of things, then that's how they're kind of getting through this process of, no touching, no, but still able to direct and coach and get people back into studios.
It's, I think, because I have a massage therapist in the family, they're the ones that are, it's going to be very interesting to see how those spas and such reopen and all. She has shared with me the requirements that were being discussed about that. So,
Yeah, it's a lot. Like salons as well.
Yeah.
Salons are, really have to rethink their space and their amount of supplies and things like that. And, having their appointments waiting outside, not congregating in a lobby, those kinds of things. So there's a lot of really good guidance. The program we had yesterday was someone from the Emergency Operations Center in Washington County. And if you didn't catch that, that's a really good program, and it's out on our YouTube. And we also have the slides available. So if you listen to it and want a copy of the slides, just send me a note and I'll get those to you.
Good.
Richard, will you share your slides with our attendees today?
Definitely will.
Excellent. So I will, if you send me a copy of it, we'll get it distributed out to everybody that participated.
What other comments or insights you taking away?
Richard?
Yep.
I thought the looking at instincts as part of the business assumptions was interesting. Because sometimes people give me ideas, but they go against my instincts. So do I follow the ideas or follow the instincts?
Well, that's where you need to take a look and see how that fits in with your strategic objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all a process of, the instincts are really kind of the beginning point. And as you move through that process of looking at your instincts, does it fit in with your business model? Do you have experience or history with that idea in your past? And or then if you don't, or even maybe you need to reassess the idea by doing the research. So let's say you've got as you mentioned, you've got somebody giving you an idea that your first reaction, your instinct, is going against that idea. Well, explore that, because it oftentimes can be a very valuable idea, that if you just dismiss it because of your history without really looking at why you're dismissing it, that would be, in essence, short-circuiting the whole process. And reevaluating why something is instinctually negative to you, you have the opportunity to see if that is a realistic decision that you need to make, or whether it is an adjusted decision that you need to work towards.
Thank you.
We have about 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
Any final questions, comments for Richard? All righty.
Okay.
Richard, thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. This will be on YouTube, so you can send it out to all your customers and clients and let them know your star was born here today.
Yeah.
So it came from promise.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I
Thank
really
you.
count it as a privilege to be able to share.
Well, great information, and I mean, just perfect timing as well, as we're got the word that we're coming out of this and starting to open up again. Folks are going to have to pivot. They're going to have to think about different things in different ways and be agile, to say the least, right?
Yes.
But we've all, I think, built a sense of resilience, if nothing else. We're very resilient, and it's just a matter of, don't get discouraged when that pivot, leads you to the next pivot, right?
Right.
Yes,
Right.
we'll all learn to be ballerinas.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just
Thank
don't
you all
ask
for
me to
joining us.
jump.
Yes,
What's that?
yes, exactly. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we have a great program tomorrow. We're doing a business news roundup. Brad Smith and I are hosting that, where we're going to talk about all the hottest headlines. And you folks would appreciate this when I say, the news above the fold. Our other generation doesn't know that they actually folded the newspaper at one point in time, and that the headlines above the fold were important ones, right? It's like, I should say, it's the news that fills up the first panel of your screen, right? So hope you will join us. It'll be a fun conversation, and really it is a dialogue. So we look forward to having folks participate and share what they've learned as well. Excellent. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.